Hey there, welcome back to this series. So this is a series of videos where I'm going deep into JavaScript and explaining some really important concepts and some weird things about JavaScript. So after watching this particular video, you will know how JavaScript functions work, how you can declare them, call them, what is something called an arguments object, which is not something we generally discuss, and how function hoisting works, which is very important concept in JavaScript. So now let's jump onto my screen. Okay, so this is my index.js where I'll be writing JavaScript, and this is the console where you will be seeing things happening. Let me just make it a bit bigger, and this too. Okay, so first let me show you how you declare a function. So basically the normal syntax is just function, and then you write the function's name and a parenthesis and then a curly bracket, and this is where you basically write what the function does. So this is called declaring a function. Now there can be basically two kinds of functions depending upon either it takes some parameters or it does not. Now for example, a function that does not take a parameter looks like, let's just call it hello, and this is where you actually give parameters. In this parenthesis, this is where you give parameters. Now I can write another function with parameters. So this may look something like, if I just want to add some things, I'll say add, and I'll give here parameters, right? So parameter can be A and B. So these two are called parameters. Now there is a confusion between a parameter, what is a parameter, and what is a argument, right? And I will tell you that further when I discuss how to call a function, right? So basically these two are the two types of function based on whether they have a parameter or not. This thing that we do now when we are doing a function and a name, this is called declaration. We are declaring a function. That does not mean that it gets executed, right? Because we are not calling it. Now to call a function, we will just use the function's name like hello and then a parenthesis. It will be empty if the function does not need any argument, right? So the difference between a parameter and an argument is that these things, the variables that are in the function declaration, this is called a parameter. Now when I call this add function, right, and I pass something into it like 6 and 4, right? So now 6 and 4 are arguments which these parameters will take. So that's the difference between a parameter and an argument, right? Parameter is in the declaration and argument are the values that these parameters take, right? So if I show you how this hello works, so hello does not need anything. So let's make it just a console log thing. So this will print something. Okay, so let's make it just print hello, right? So let me just do this, comment it out. Now if I just save it, you'll see that we are printing hello here, right? Why? Because I called hello. Now when I call hello, this things, whatever is inside this scope, inside this curly braces of the function hello will be executed, right? Now similarly, if I just, so this actually should give us a sum, right? So I'll do console log a plus b, right? A plus b, this will print a sum. So if I just to save, you'll see that we have 10. And why is that? Because when I called this, I gave the a an argument of 6 and I gave this parameter b an argument of 4, right? So that's how this function declaration and calling a function works. Now another thing with JavaScript functions, that whenever you have a function which does not return anything, right? So how you return is that when I do return a plus b, that's how you return this value out of the function. But this function is not returning anything. So whenever any function in JavaScript which does not return anything, that function actually as default returns undefined. So let me just show you how that happens. For example, I'm calling this function with 6 and 4, right? So what I will do is that I'll assign this function to a variable, let's call a. Okay, now if I just print here a, you'll see that it will give me undefined. There you go. So first you see 10, and why that happened is that when I called add, so this is the console log which gives you 10 right here, but this console log when I'm printing a here, which is assigned to this function, it is giving us undefined. And why is that happening is that this function does not return anything, right? But if you return something, right? If I return, instead of just printing it, if I just return it, right? So what will happen is that when I call this thing, this a plus b's value will be returned to the variable basically which is calling it, right? So if I just save it, you'll see that I'll be printing 10 because this a has now 10 because we are returning things out of a function. Okay, so now let's dive a bit deeper into functions. So I'm going to tell you about something called an arguments object, which is not something generally discussed when discussing JavaScript functions. Let me show you an example. Okay, so you can see this function and tell me, hey, you are mad because you are not taking anything in there and you are finding the sum of an array. Basically, you are just looping around an array and finding the sum. How you're doing that? Well, that is the thing about arguments, right? So this is a object. These arguments that you see, this is not something we are passing or anything. It is inbuilt inside a function. Every function has an argument object which behaves like an array, right? If I just call this and print whatever I get, so how we call it? We call it add, and then here I will just normally randomly pass values 1 2 3 1 to 4 or 5 6. Okay, cool. So if I just pass this thing and save it, you will see here that we will get the sum, that is 18. And how that happens is that whatever you pass in this function as arguments, the arguments inbuilt this implicit object that every function has called arguments just gets these values and it behaves like an array. So you can see here the arguments has this length thing, which is also something that an array has. You must have used dot length to find the length of an array. So this argument object has access to this function, which you can use to find the length of these arguments that you are receiving. Obviously, you can access the different elements in that arguments by how you just access some element in an array. Okay, so now this is another very important concept of mainly of JavaScript itself, not just about functions, right? So this is called hoisting. So hoisting can be done with variables and also with functions. As we are discussing functions, so I'll show you how function hoisting works. So what is function hoisting? Right, so hoisting is a concept in JavaScript where the JavaScript engine actually before the execution phase. So there are two phases when the JavaScript engine runs. There is a creation phase and there is a execution phase. So before that execution phase, in the creation phase, and don't worry about these things, I'll make a video on it, how the JS engine works, and that is really beautiful thing, right? So what happens in this creation phase is that all the variable declarations, or in this case all the function declarations, automatically move to the top of the program or top of this script that you're writing, and that's how throughout the program you just get access to all those function declarations. So for example, if I just write a function here, function add, and I will pass a comma b, I will just console log a plus b, right? Now here if I just call this function on top of the function, on top of the declaration, right? So basically now you might think that, okay, when we are calling this, we don't have access to this function because it should be at the top, right? For this calling thing to know that, okay, this function exists. But the thing with JavaScript is that, as I told you, when I just save it or before it gets executed, this JavaScript, what it will do is that it will automatically move this function and place it here above everything, right? So that's how this thing will get access to this, and without error this program will work. So if I just now show you 5,6 and I'll just save it here, you'll see that I will get 11. So what happened in between this saving is that the function just went up and this calling got access to it, and now we are getting this thing, right? So this function declaration going to the top before our program gets executed is called function hoisting. So this is something that basically everyone asks in the JavaScript interviews, like what is hoisting? And when you don't know it, it feels like, oh, what is this concept, I don't know, this must be something hard, but actually it is really simple stuff. Okay, so that was the video, and if you are watching till now, this really means a lot, and you can just go down and give a comment. It would be really good to know you, and do let me know what did you learn and what more concepts that bother you in JavaScript. I can just explain them. And obviously, if you like this video, do smash that subscribe button, that means a lot. And if you loved it, share it in your social, tag me up on Twitter. It will be really good to know you. So I'll see you in the next one. Till then, have a great day and keep building.